Okay, Michael, it's the Ringer Live NFL Trade Deadline Special. I'm Kevin Clark. With me, as always, is Mike Lombardi. Mike, the trade deadline exploded this year. There's a million reasons for it. The rising salary cap, the creativity of NFL teams now, they're sort of going for it. But the biggest trade, and one that will have a ripple effect throughout the NFL for the next couple of years, is going to be Jimmy Garoppolo going from backup in New England to starter in San Francisco for a second-round pick. Based on everything you've heard, give me your initial big-picture impressions of that mega trade.
Well, I think it's a great trade for San Francisco. Look, I was fortunate enough to be around. I was responsible in the room for drafting Jimmy. I've seen Jimmy work for 3 years. I think Jimmy is a starting quarterback, a playoff caliber starting quarterback on the team. And then you combine him with Kyle Shanahan, who just watched Matt Ryan this year. Okay, Kyle Shanahan with Matt Ryan averages over 9 yards per attempt. This year, back to Steve Sarkisian, he's back to a normal Matt Ryan. Take that. Take Matt Schaub, who's in Houston, with Kyle Shanahan. All of a sudden, you've got this great thing. So I think Garoppolo went to a great team. I sense, Kevin, remorse in New England. I think they put a lot into this. And as Belichick said today to the media, the last window closed, which meant he couldn't get him signed to an extension. It was going to be too much money. He already had a starting quarterback. And so he had to make a decision at this window, because if he lets this day go past, then he gets nothing for him but a compensatory pick. And I think they cashed on the deal. I think this is a deal that they probably didn't want to make but had to make.
You said you sensed remorse in New England. What are people around the league that you're talking to think about this deal in general?
I think everybody's initial reaction is, look, why didn't they get more for him? I mean, this is a really good player. Jared Goff went for a king's ransom. You know, Carson Wentz went for this. Deshaun Watson, all these young players go. And I think at the conclusion of the decision that was made, I think they took the deal that they knew they could make. I mean, Cleveland is notorious for trying to undercut teams. Okay, you've got, this player, we'll trade you an 8th round pick, even though there's not 8 picks. Cleveland had always tried to be involved with Jimmy Garoppolo, but never to the degree of put something on the table, nor could they make a decision when it came to that. So they never had a chance to make this deal. Cleveland is exactly what we think Cleveland is. Really not in most deals, because they try to outsmart everybody. This was a situation where I think Belichick felt comfortable with San Francisco. I think they felt comfortable that they would make the deal. Kyle Shanahan, forget John Lynch's title. Kyle Shanahan has all the power. If Kyle Shanahan wants to make a deal, he's making a deal. It's not John Lynch. Lynch works for Kyle. So let's get that clear. And when you have two coaches that ultimately have the authority, there's no buffer. You don't have to go to anybody to get permission to make a deal. That's how deals happen. And I think that this was a situation where Jimmy Garoppolo gets a chance to go with a really good coach. Kyle is somebody that Belichick respects. His father, Mike, is someone Belichick really respects. It's a pretty good situation. The 49ers are very fortunate here.
So I guess the obvious question, a lot of people are talking about maybe the Patriots didn't get enough because of so many reports that maybe Garoppolo was worth a first-round pick. Maybe he was worth the 12th overall pick in the draft that the Browns had at that point in April.
But the Browns never offered that.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
That's the point.
I'm saying the initial reports raised the expectations of an eventual Garoppolo trade. Those never existed, or else they would have taken it. So did the Patriots get enough for Jimmy Garoppolo?
I think they got the best they could for the situation. Do I think they got enough? No.
Right.
Do I think this guy's way better than the top of the second pick? Yeah. I think they got the deal. I think the 49ers won the deal. I think the Patriots got the best that they could have possibly have hoped for in this situation. But when you get a starting quarterback who's ready to play, who's got no tread on any of these tires, he can come in here, and then you imagine the Kyle Shanahan offense around him, bootlegs, nakeds, him moving around, throwing the ball down the field. I think this is a huge win for San Francisco. And the point you made earlier about what it positions them in the draft, I think, is critical.
Yeah, and so I think I agree with you, but the Niners were always going to win the trade. This is a team that's going to have $100 million in cap space to, first of all, retain Garoppolo, but then build a team around him. Lynch and Shanahan both have 6-year contracts. That rebuild is going to take a long time, but it speeds up the process now having a quarterback and knowing who it's going to be. I also think that, as we were saying earlier off camera, the idea that they could have the first pick or the second pick and not need a quarterback, that is so important. Remember, they traded out of the second pick last year, and so now they're going to be able to get a haul for the future for a team that wants a Sam Darnold or another top-tier elite quarterback. And so I think that The Patriots got all they could for him at this point in the season, but whoever got Garoppolo in this situation was always going to win the trade.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that happened. And look, San Francisco is fortunate because they passed on Deshaun. And, they didn't like Deshaun. They didn't like Trubisky enough to pick him. They liked C.J. Beathard. They thought he was going to be the next Kirk Cousins. And they've got so much cap room, Kevin, this won't happen, but this is how much cap room they have. They could sign Kirk Cousins to a huge deal. They could franchise Jimmy Garoppolo, okay? And then they could trade Jimmy Garoppolo. Say they don't even play Jimmy Garoppolo, and they franchise him next year. They could probably do better than the second pick in the draft. They could move up if they – now, that's not why they did the deal. But that's how much cap room they have.
What does this say about the most important player in this whole ecosystem, and that's Tom Brady?
Brady's going to retire a Patriot. I think there's no confusion. I think there's always been how is this going to end? The ending, most novelists write endings, I know John Irving, the great novelist, The World According to Garp, he will not write a book until he knows what the last sentence of the book is. We now know what the last sentence of the book is for Tom Brady, okay? And so, therefore, he is going to retire a Patriot. There's no chance he'll be traded. He's the only quarterback currently on the roster right now. And however long he goes is however long the Patriots can maintain their excellence.
Now, what does this mean? The entire Patriots organization is all in on Tom Brady now. Brian Hoyer is probably going to back up Brady. It's Brady or bust. So what does this mean for Bill Belichick, who has spent the last 17 years playing the long game in New England, and now it seems like he's not?
I think that's a fair question. Most decisions, if you've been around Bill, are always about sustainability. They're never about situations. They're always about sustainability. This was a situation. And I can't answer, nor would I would speak for Bill, but there was always going to be, he would never want to leave a franchise without a quarterback. That's what I thought the Garoppolo thing was the transitional point was so good. But who could have thought that Tom Brady at age 40 was going to have as good a season as he's had this year as he had last year? In terms of just looking at his numbers. He's taken more hits this year. They haven't been as effective in the red zone this year. But for the most part, he has been. So that played into this decision-making. I think if you'd have said most 40-year-old quarterbacks, could they maintain? Look, let's just take Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers. Those guys you can see the end is really clear with them. I mean, it's over, right? You can't see the end with Brady yet. Perhaps it's closer than we think, but it's not there yet.
Avocado ice cream. That's what it's all about.
I wish that were the case.
That's what it's all about.
I only like vanilla, though. I don't understand it.
Okay.
I got to switch.
As I said earlier, the tentacles of this trade stretch throughout the league. Not only, to the teams involved, but just the quarterback market, the 2018 draft, everything. Specifically, it relates to Kirk Cousins because Kirk Cousins was the guy who was going to be a beneficiary of that $100 million in cap space and get a contract that maybe made him the highest paid player in the NFL. Obviously, we know now that that's not a real indicator of success since it's gone Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford, and it will eventually be Kirk Cousins. But San Francisco is probably out now. I know you laid out the scenario in which he everybody under the sun signs in San Francisco. It's probably not going to happen. What does Kirk Cousins do now?
Kirk Cousins is in the greatest position. Nothing changed for Kirk Cousins. The Pittsburgh Steelers could be calling on Kirk Cousins. The Denver Broncos, we saw that performance last night. I think it's fairly clear with 1,000% certainty the Denver Broncos need a quarterback. So he has all these options available to him. Now, he just doesn't have the option of going with somebody that has the offense that's tailor-made for him. But I think
a $50 million offer sheet, which could have happened.
But he's going to get that. I mean, look, all you need is two teams interested in you. And I think Kirk Cousins has made enough money in his life that I think he could say, you know what, I'm going to go play for Pittsburgh, or I'm going to go play for Denver, or I'm going to go to Arizona. I may take $4 million less.
Jacksonville.
Perhaps I'll go to a state that has no state income tax, like Jacksonville. So Jacksonville's offer is going to be, say, $5 million a year less than what the 49er offer would have been. Well, it's pretty much an even offer because of state income taxes. So I don't feel sorry. Don't cry for Kirk Cousins today. Kirk Cousins is in a great spot. The team to cry for are the Redskins because they have done a horrible job of planning out this quarterback scenario, and it's only going to bite them because they have alienated the guy that they need to keep happy, and that's Kirk Cousins, even though they're the ones shelling out the money.
I'm not crying for them because they've bungled this as badly as anyone. I mean, only the Lions with Ndamukong Suh have had a franchise player screw up the contract process for this long and then seen him walk. So, I mean, we can cry for them, but they had their chance.
Yeah, they definitely.
And they could franchise tag him again. They just pay him.
Well, 144%. I mean, so it eats up all your cap. I mean, the Niners, look, the Redskins, it's fascinating. You really get a true behind-the-scenes portrait of what's actually going on in Washington by whenever Washington plays on Monday Night Football. Okay? If you want to know what's going on in Washington, just tape that game and then pay close attention to what John Gruden says, as he refers to him as Jay Gruden, about what's going on. I think you'll know everything you need to know.
Okay, another big trade happened this morning. The Eagles traded for Jay Ajayi. Now, obviously, this bolsters their running game. It says a lot about what's going on in Miami, who, by the way, still have a winning record at 4-3.
Right.
That's how weird the AFC is. Michael, should the Eagles have gone for offensive line help instead of another running back?
I definitely think they should have. They had been on everything, and I know we started at 1 o'clock, and I would be shocked if the Eagles haven't made some kind of minimal deal before that comes through, maybe perhaps a little later. But for me, this deal is interesting from the standpoint that it looks on the surface that Philly won this deal hands down.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that teams like Miami are that dumb. And Ajayi has got some knee issues. He's got some other issues that go on in their locker room. And I think Miami just had enough of all of them. Look, if they could have traded Ndamukong Suh today, they would have done it. They just couldn't afford to do that. So that being said, I don't get the fit for Philly. Blunt's been good, but Philly has no running back that can pass protect. Everybody attacks them very much with blitzes. And Ajayi, whether he can pass protect or not, remains to be seen. I just don't know. Now they've got a problem with LeGarrette Blount. LeGarrette Blount has $1.5 million of incentives that he's basically thinking he's going to earn because he's the man. He's not going to get them if Ajayi comes in there. I think it's going to be an interesting how they manipulate the roster and have this conversation with the players.
It's very interesting to me. The Miami Herald reported after the trade that Jay Ajayi has been complaining bitterly about his touches.
Right.
So now he goes and he's sharing the ball with LeGarrette Blount. He's in an offense, thrown into a contender at this point. And so either that's going to help or Ajayi has such a negative personality, as the Miami Herald portrayed him, that he will immediately be complaining about his touches. So I'm fascinated to see what the reaction of Jay Ajayi playing for the NFC's best team at this point is.
Yeah, I'd be interested. This I do know. I know this for a fact. Dallas is interested in trading for a running back. They have had this, whether they get DeMarco Murray or not. Again, we're on before this happened. But even if they don't get DeMarco Murray today, the reality was they're shopping for a running back. So Ajayi's name was in their pro personnel department. I mean, Jerry Jones and all his people around him knew that they could have got Ajayi. And if they would have offered a 4, their 4 is probably going to be better than Philly's 4. So it was really, when you look at this on the surface, you say, wow, Philly got a great deal. No, Miami got the only deal that they could make. Because Miami wasn't being secretive about this. They called everybody. And the only teams willing to pay were the Philadelphia Eagles.
Third big deal. And it was the first big deal, and it was, overshadowed by every deal subsequently. Dwane Brown to the Seahawks. Now, this was rumored for weeks because it was obvious. Dwane Brown was holding out in Houston. He played one game. The Seahawks have a contender in everything but the offensive line. They needed something there, and this was the fit. Mike, what is your impression? Does this make them – can one player like Dwane Brown make them a better offense?
Look, if you just look at the lineage of Dwane Brown, he's played in an offense with Kyle Shanahan, with Gary Kubiak, that's been an outside zone team that Tom Cable wants to run. And for the Seattle Seahawks to be effective offensively, they must run the outside zone scheme. They can't run it with Eddie Lacy because he's slower to get to the junction point than I am. Okay, 6 carries for no yards. And Rawls had 6 carries for -1 yard last week. Their best running back is J.D. McKissick. Now, I thought they would trade for a running back, but getting Brown helps their run game tremendously for the outside zone, especially to the left. This is the best left tackle they've had since Okun was healthy and playing well. Really important for them. And I think when they get that, even though their defense got shredded last week, I think it'll really make a huge difference for what they're trying to get done. I think it was a great deal.
So here's my question. You mentioned the Seahawks not going out and getting a running back. When we look at the landscape of the NFL today, what are the deals that you're surprised weren't made. The Colts didn't really go full tank. They didn't trade T.Y. Hilton. They didn't trade Dante Moncrief. Excuse me. The Steelers kept Martavis Bryant. We kind of expected that. But when you look around the NFL, what did you expect to see that you didn't?
I thought the Bengals would have traded a back, okay? They've got 3 backs. They don't know really what to do with all of them. Jeremy Hill was the guy I thought would get traded. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. When you're looking for trades around the trade deadline, you start and end with players that's contracts are expiring. Because even if you take a guy whose contract expires and you rent him for 8 games and you think he can play well for you, his compensatory pick is going to be significant. So you'll get that back. Perhaps you'll recoup some of your investment in the player. I thought Jeremy Hill would get traded. I thought a running back would go to Seattle. They need one. I like J.D. McKissick. I think he's the best back on their team. They need another running back, and it ain't Lacy. I don't care what weight clause Lacy has made. He's too slow. And people eat him up. Now, if he were running a power scheme, it might be different. But the outside zone scheme doesn't fit him.
I like that. Eat him up. That was a good pun. Thank you. The Buffalo Bills have acquired Kelvin Benjamin. Is that supposed to help?
Interesting trade. They know Kelvin Benjamin.
Yeah, of course. Brandon
They know
Beane,
him really well.
Sean McDermott.
And so
both from Carolina.
Carolina has had issues with him. I think it gives them a big play red zone receiver. I like what Buffalo's doing. I really do. I
love them.
I love what they're doing with their team. They feel comfortable with them. Now, whether he's going to be 100% healthy, but he gives them that mismatch receiver they really big. Because right now, Jordan Matthews, Andre Holmes, all these guys haven't really stepped up to the level. But I like the deal for that.
Why would the Panthers make that deal? They're in the hunt, too.
I think the Panthers need to move McCaffrey to running back.
Yep.
To receiver.
Slot receiver.
Slot receiver. I think that's what they need to do. And I think that
he's had trouble between the tackles.
He's not a running back.
Yeah.
And when they put him on the field, they alert everybody, hey, by the way, we're going to run the ball with, we're going to run screen or draw. And they've got Curtis Samuel that they need to play. They have too many of the same receivers. They're almost like the 76ers. They have too many guys that play the same position.
Yep.
Right? So Funchess is a big receiver. Benjamin's a big receiver. To me, they had to get rid of one of them. They picked Benjamin.
A lot of people in our Facebook page asking why, Mike, the Browns did not move on from Josh Gordon today.
That's hard for me to understand. Why the Browns didn't pick Deshaun Watson, I don't know. Why they didn't pick Carson Wentz, I don't know.
We could do this all day.
This is like why. You're going to have to call Sashi Brown at some point or Paul DePodesto. At some point, they weren't even in. Let's be really clear here, Kevin. They were not even involved in the Jimmy Garoppolo trade.
Right.
They didn't have a chance at getting this player whatsoever. So this whole Josh Gordon fascination to me is ridiculous. Like, who was going to trade for Josh Gordon? He hasn't played since when? Okay, is he in shape? Who knows? Can he actually play? Is he going to get reinstated? There's so many questions. First of all, that he would have any value is really ridiculous.
Okay. Final thing, we're going to grade each of the 3 major trades.
Is that the only trade we missed since we've been on the air?
Benjamin?
Yes. Okay.
I believe so, yes. All right. We'll start with Garoppolo.
Yeah.
For the Niners, give me a grade.
A.
I agree. A+. If you can find a quarterback, you can control the draft. You got him cheap this year. You can figure out the rest of the stuff later.
It's
That's
a marriage made in heaven.
That's
really
a home run.
Yeah.
For the Patriots, the Garoppolo trade.
I think it's a C.
Yeah.
I think it's a C.
At this point, that's the best they could get. Do you fault them
the fact that it's a 2, look, that 2 will go start.
Sure.
That 2 might start at 35 and it might end up at 55. But, because they're going to be probably Pickens, but so it'll be. I think the other thing that's not in this conversation is, before we grade the Patriots, is I think the Patriots this summer, when they traded Brissett, I think they felt like they could sign Garoppolo. Yeah. They couldn't do that. Okay, that's A. B, I think they thought their team was a lot better than it really is.
Yep.
I think they thought this defense was really good. They had a lot of good young players. And all of a sudden now, I think they're looking at their team and saying, wait a minute, we have so many holes, and Garoppolo's never going to play. We're going to have to maximize that.
Plus, they can franchise Malcolm Butler now, if they so choose.
If they so choose.
All right, Ajayi for the Eagles.
I'm going to give that a C+. I'm concerned about the health of the player. On the surface, it looks like everybody's going to give the Eagles an A. They're liable to have the Mummers are liable to come out today for Howie Roseman and just have a parade for him in Philadelphia. But I'm a little skeptical. There's more than meets the eye here, especially considering you traded the only real back you had on your team for a 4th-round pick if he could do anything, wouldn't it be wise to keep him and trade him in the offseason? Something's wrong here.
Yeah, I'm going C- for the Eagles. And as far as the Dolphins go, I mean, I think they just had to get him out of the room.
It's addition by subtraction.
Yeah, they had to get him out of the room. That's a B. Okay, Dwane Brown.
I think Seattle gets an A. I think they get the perfect. If he were going to a team that was more power, I would say no. But he's going to the perfect team. He plays in that system. He'll play on Sunday, and he won't miss a beat. He'll know all the line calls. I think it's a really good deal for them.
It's an A for me. It's a D- for Houston. They're going to get Deshaun Watson killed. Highest pressure rate in the NFL already, 46%.
I mean, look, that was a weakness. They don't have a really good line to start off with. And we saw it happen, but they've averaged 39 points a game since they put Watson in at quarterback, and only one game was that with Brown. I think they felt like maybe they can, and they're recouping some of the draft picks that they lost in all these trades. Look, they got out from the heist from Osweiler. They had to give up a 2 to do that. The Watson cost them a 1. They had to take an asset and try to turn it into some other players. They have a real issue. I think what people misconstrue about the Houston Texans is this. They never were a great defense.
Right.
They were a great defensive front.
Yeah.
Their back end, Kevin Johnson, Kareem Jackson, all those corners that they have collected as first-round picks, they're not very good, but they're only good when the rush is getting there. When the rush isn't there, what Seattle did to them on Sunday is going to be more the norm.
Well, staying on Houston for a second, it's such a disjointed season. There aren't really, aside from Pittsburgh and New England, maybe Kansas City, we don't know who the elite teams are in the AFC. Is Houston, as currently constructed, do they have a chance to get to the AFC Championship game, especially after this trade?
I mean, look, they're the Raiders from last year. They just got to outscore everybody. They can't stub their toe. I mean, Billy O'Brien can't not give the ball back. I mean, he's watching the same game I'm watching, right? His defense can't stop anybody. And when they got the interception against Russell Wilson, you had to go on the field and say, we've got to get a first down because Russell Wilson will come back and beat. This is when Russell Wilson's at his best. If they do that, they have a chance. If their defense was the same as last year with this offense, they would be the best team in the NFL.
Okay, broad question, Michael. You've been a general manager in the NFL. Obviously, this year is very different from most trade deadline days. Take us through what being a general manager on deadline day is like.
Well, first of all, there's the reality, and then there's just a bunch of talkers. So, okay you've got to get to decision makers.
Right.
This is the hardest thing to do because
getting them on the phone.
Well, know the teams that you can actually make a deal with.
Okay.
Because there's so many teams. There's an old saying, they've never dedicated a monument to a committee. Okay, well, there's so many committees on these NFL teams. Oh, well, let me talk to that guy. Let me talk to the coach. Let me talk to this guy, or let me talk to that guy. When you can find the decision maker and deal with him directly and know that, hey, if I offer you this for that, will you do the deal? Yes. And that's really hard to do. Or else the other thing, you're just exercising. It's just a lot of conversation. So you really start with that pretense. Like, look, I'm going to call these teams because I know if I call Dallas, Jerry will make a deal if he wants to make a deal. If I call Buffalo will make a deal if I can make a deal. If I call Green Bay, they'll make the deal, but typically they won't make a deal, so there's no sense in calling them. And then there's some teams, like these analytical teams, that just constantly, Cleveland, for example, that have to go to a committee meeting before they make a decision. And you can't make a deal that way.
What's the biggest change? Because, obviously the salary cap exploding has facilitated a lot of these deals. The way GMs operate now has changed from 10, 15 years ago. What's been the biggest change as far as how teams view deadline day?
The owners have added so many layers of people involved in the decision making that it's stumbled, much like Congress and Senate. It's stumbled any decision being made. That's the problem. And what's changed now is free agency because teams still haven't grasped, just like Dirk Cotter hasn't grasped that calling a timeout at 2:05 is not a good thing to do. They haven't grasped that if I trade for a guy whose contract's going to expire, I can get it back in compensatory. And once people start to do that, it'll make sense. I mean, Ron Wolf had this. Ron Wolf traded Fred Vincent, a backup corner who was a restricted player, to the Seattle Seahawks for Ahman Green. Now, Vincent did nothing for Seattle, but Ahman Green made his franchise. He traded 2 restricted players for one another. That doesn't happen anymore in the league.
No, and that was interesting. Brian Hoyer was kept out of the deal in New England for comp pick reasons.
Well, he was kept out for comp pick reasons. Plus, if they take that deal, they assume all the guarantees in the contract. Okay, so they take him out. Now he's a free agent. They can sign him to a 2-year deal at the minimum. They'll get him on 2 years at maybe a minimum this year, a little bit more, and he still gets all his guarantees from San Francisco. Only they're paying the bill, and the 49ers and the Raiders and the Patriots aren't.
Okay, we're going to play a little You're the GM, Mike. If you were Chris Ballard today, if you're taking over the Colts, lost season, Andrew Luck doesn't look like he's coming back, what do you do with that roster? Do you try to facilitate T.Y. Hilton, maybe ask for a little less to try to get him out of town, Dante Moncrief? What do you do?
I think I do exactly what he's doing. First thing I do is I put Andrew Luck on IR, and I basically tell the franchise, look, we've been spoiled for so long. We went from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck. That's over with. And then I would try to improve my special teams. I would work constantly on trying to get better in the kicking game, try to find players. Forget the coaches getting a guy to play right away. That's never going to happen. Those coaches are basically just worried about their job security. So my best friend would be the special teams coach, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to try to bring in as many guys as we can. If they can cover kicks, cover punts, and we're going to make that team really good, because probably what's going to happen at the end of the year, none of these coaches are going to be here, and we need to figure out what players could stay.
Yeah, special teams and roster churning are always hand in hand. Okay, next, you're Mike Tannenbaum.
Oh, God, don't.
Yeah, no, I know. I just wanted that to hang there for a little bit. You wake up, it's Twilight Zone, you wake up, you're Mike Tannenbaum, you're in Davie, Florida, and it's this morning. Tell me what you're doing.
Well, if you're Tannenbaum, you're always looking for another receiver, because that's typically what he always thinks the game's won with receiver. I think Tannenbaum's got bigger issues in all seriousness. I think his locker room's a mess. Yeah. I think the signing of Ndamukong Suh that's typically what happens. You sign this marquee player, you have no real culture in your building. And when you work, what I don't think fans really understand is when you are in an area like Miami or New Orleans, and you're all on the 95 corridor, or you're in a city that tends to party, the character of the players you bring in that locker room is really critical, okay? Because there's so much temptations around the area, and there's so much for players to do around there that their minds can get kind of lost in everything. And so that locker room that you build in Miami and New Orleans and Tampa has to be way different than the locker room perhaps you build in Green Bay or Seattle. Okay? And I think that's where Tannenbaum hasn't really grasped that idea. He's at a hotbed place that's very difficult to manage. You're near a lot of different things. You're near a lot of temptations. Players can do a lot of things. You better have a lot of guys that love football on your team in Miami, because if not, they're going to find something else to do. You
got to do what the Niners have done, which is stick the team out about 2 hours from the middle of the city.
Right, exactly right. I mean, look, it's like anything. You have to understand where you are in what's part of the city you're in, and figure out how to handle it.
Okay, you're Kevin Colbert, Steelers. You have Martavis Bryant, he's unhappy. What do you try to do?
So there's a thing called the law of threes, right? So there's three groups of people, right? There's the group that will do anything you want them to do. Then there's the middle group that are very undecided. And then there's the group like Martavis Bryant, who you couldn't make happy no matter what you told him. So as a leader, if I'm Kevin Colbert, what do? I ignore Martavis Bryant. Let him talk, let him tweet, let him do everything he wants. To me, he doesn't exist.
Instagram comments saying he's better than Juju
He doesn't even exist. I pay all my attention to the players who are going to try to help me win, and I'm going to ignore him.
All right, you're Jerry Jones. Life is good for you
really good.
right now.
I got a helicopter to work.
Exactly. You got the party bus. You got the whole thing. But you got to make some deals. You're waking up this morning. What are you doing?
I would have traded for DeMarco Murray.
Sure.
I would have brought him in. He would have known the system. Here's the problem with staying pat with Alfred Morris. He can't do anything in the passing game. And he really gives no option for Dak Prescott in the passing game. So I needed a more multi-dimensional player behind him. And with this Elliott suspension coming, first of all, if I was Jerry, I would have told Elliott, look, take the 6 games at the beginning of the season. Like, we're not going to win this battle. And the only chance we have to get off in this battle is we think we can suspend it all the way through the year, because at some point we're going to serve 6 games. Brady served 4, even though nobody thought that would it happened, okay? So I would have done it earlier, but even now, I think I would have traded for DeMarco Murray. Make $6.5 million. I could have guaranteed his salary, spread it out, would have had a nice deal. I think he's the better option for me.
Totally agree. I mean, I just think that this Elliott suspension, the CBA just says it's going to happen.
Look, here's what people, it just drives me crazy. The players collectively bargained the commissioner to have all the authority. Like, this was not just they slipped this in. This isn't like they just put this on the paper, like that you didn't read the fine print on your cable contract. Like, okay, this is real. You negotiated. You gave them all the power. It's collectively bargained. It's signed. You're not going to win that in any court.
Okay, people online, the internet, the beautiful internet, want to know. You're Tom Coughlin. Yeah. You've woken up. You're doing that thing on the treadmill where your resting heartbeat is like 40, whatever the hell he brags about. Do you trade for a quarterback?
I would have. I would have been all over Jimmy Garoppolo. I watched him practice. I would have seen him. I've seen Blake Bortles. We're doing everything in our power to make sure Blake Bortles. I mean, I probably think the Jaguars put Blake Bortles in a visiting opponent's jersey during the week because they don't want him to beat them at the thing, okay? I would have tried to. If you put Jimmy Garoppolo on the Jacksonville Jaguars today, they'll have a chance to compete for a Final Four spot.
Oh,
they're that good on defense. They can run the football. I think they are creative enough offensively. They're a good football team. I think they're a quarterback away. They're not going to win one-dimensional. They're not going to win. And look, people say, well, Bortles threw for 300. That was against the Indianapolis Colts, who can't guard anybody.
Right.
Okay? Stop.
So here's my question about the Jaguars generally is, let's say Garoppolo's off the table because he would be the easiest solution and he would solve so many of your problems. But would you have gone out and tried to get a secondary quarterback like an A.J. McCarron, a guy you could get for a third-round pick or something like that? Yeah, the sort of second
Kevin,
tier.
I mean, you're asking the wrong guy. I would have gone after anybody. I would have probably called whomever I could. Look, I think Bortles is the road to nowhere. And what makes Bortles more alarming than the road to nowhere is he comes with a $20 million price tag when I get nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay? And if he gets hurt in the next 8 games, I'm gonna be on the books for $19 million. I got to find somebody because if he gets hurt, I don't want to eat that cap number.
You wake up, you're Howie Roseman. You're in Philadelphia.
The Mummers.
The Mummers, sure. So you made one deal. Is it enough? Do they need another wide receiver? Do they need more line help? Or is Ajayi enough to get them better than what they were in the first half of the season?
The Eagles are an interesting team this year in the sense of this. Wentz has been so spectacular. First of all, they rank 3rd in the league in third downs or 10 or more. Now you got to be. That's usually where that company puts you in. That puts you in really bad offensive company.
Yep.
Okay, so you've been a bad offense on 1st and 2nd down. Maybe Ajayi can help that. I don't think so because they throw it so much on 1st and 2nd down. But the reality of it is now without Jason Peters, the quarterback was hit more times than anybody else in the National Football League with the exception of 2 other quarterbacks. Now he's going to get hit even more. The first game we saw him against the 49ers without Peters, it was bad. But if you're Howie, there's not a lot of left tackles available for trade. And so what could he do? There's really nobody out there. Detroit needs a left tackle. Seattle
needed one.
The New York Giants need a left tackle. You couldn't
they need
find
a lot
one.
of things.
Yeah, so I think he just did the best he could.
The Eagles is currently constructed. If Peters is out, can they win a Super Bowl?
I think the depth of their defensive line is going to be the telltale sign. When they lost a little bit of depth last year, that was the problem for them. I don't know if they can continue this pace where Wentz converts 3rd and 10s at a 50% pace. I don't think they can do it. I think when they play against a team like a Seattle that can force them into some tough situations, I think it'll be hard. But they're playing really well right now in this. No, I take that back. They're playing really good on defense, and Wentz is bailing them out of a lot of plays.
Okay, Mike, I hate to do this to you. You're the Browns GM.
Yeah.
You wake up this morning. What do you do to improve your roster? I mean, obviously, you've already said no one's going to take Josh Gordon. Garoppolo is a non-starter. The Patriots don't want to deal with you. So what do you do to improve that roster? Or build for the future, play the long game, whatever it is.
They've been playing the long game.
Yep.
I mean, they're
the longest game.
They're the longest game ever. I mean, they make the 76ers look like the process. I mean, look, I don't know what Sashi has in store because they want to win every trade. They pass on everybody. Nobody's good enough. Bill Walsh once said this to me years ago when we were in a draft room. He said, the search for the perfect player never ends. Well, the search for the perfect player is going on in Cleveland. It's never going to end.
I like that. All right. So, and they haven't even found a good player, let alone the perfect player.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and Hugh can say the Haslams are behind him 100%. What I find fascinating about that, Kevin, is the fact that Hugh said it twice now, that the Haslams are completely supportive of him and all that. But nobody from the Haslam family has echoed those statements.
You are the Giants.
Yeah.
General manager Jerry Reese, or you're Ben McAdoo. Let's make it full Twilight Zone. You wake up, you're Ben McAdoo. You got the slick back hair. You're having a great time. Michael Lombardi's really coming after you. What do you do if you are a brain trust member of the Giants? Do you pull the trigger on Eli Manning?
I pull the trigger. I'm not. It's the road to nowhere too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, look, Eli's been a tremendous player. We won 2 Super Bowls, but it's not the same player. Is Davis Webb the answer? I don't think he is. But I'm not going to be able to move forward until I move backwards a step. And I'm going to have to make that. It's hard. That's what makes the NFL so hard. They're tough decisions. So you think it was easy for Bill Walsh to trade Joe Montana to Kansas City? No. I think it's difficult. But these are why you're getting paid to make them. And the key, and this is an Al Davis quote, the greatness of the Raiders lies in our ability to make decisions before everybody else can see the reality. And I think that's true here. You've got to make this decision. You should have made it in the offseason. You should have look, they were trying to get Patrick Mahomes. Don't ever forget that now. People talk about that. They were a team that wanted to move up to get Mahomes. They liked Mahomes. Ben McAdoo went to work out one player last offseason, Patrick Mahomes. So they see it too. They just have a hard time pulling the trigger.
Ben McAdoo saw one player work out last year?
I think he went to one workout for a private workout.
Hard worker. Good work ethic.
Well, typically the Giants don't do that, right? But he might have gone to other quarterbacks, but the one that he went to was with the most interest was Mahomes.
Interesting. The Carolina Panthers, the return they got on that aforementioned Benjamin trade, a 3rd round and a 7th round pick, which is a pretty good haul for Kelvin Benjamin. I didn't expect that to be the return. Thomas Davis tweeted out a frowny face. Captain Munnerlyn is upset on Twitter. When you trade a veteran like that, or a guy who at least is known to the locker room and is known to be at least a piece that helps you for a draft pick, how do you manage that locker room? How do you tell the veterans, hey, we're still in this, we have 5 wins?
Well, I think the head coach has got to be proactive and walk in the room and say, hey, look, guys, we know we're in a business. This is a business decision that was made. Nothing against Kelvin. We have to move forward. The only thing that matters are the guys in this room, and let's try to go out and win a game. I mean, we all loved him. He was a great teammate, but this is a business decision, and we have to move forward. I think that's how it becomes. This isn't college. And you've got to refer back to where it is in terms of the business, of the reality of the business that we've chosen.
I talked to Ron Rivera a couple years ago. We had a long discussion about how he manages the locker room, and he says one of the things he does, he just hangs out in the locker room. The way to not lose the locker room is to be in the locker room all the time, and that's a difference between him and a lot of guys. So I think he can weather this storm.
Right, and he can stand in front of the players and say, look, I was on a team that traded the X, Y, and Z, and here's how we have to do it. So he comes from a player's background, and that helps. Okay, we're wrapping up, Michael. Final thoughts. What's the biggest story that's going to stick with you from today? I think the 49ers solving their quarterback problem. I mean, look, I calculated before the Garoppolo trade, there were 14 teams needed quarterbacks. Almost half the league needed quarterbacks. And the 49ers got one for a top of the second and got a really good one. Perhaps I'm close to it, but I've watched Garoppolo practice every single day. I've watched him. I think they got a really good player. Totally agree. I mean, I just think when you look at the Niners, what bad moves have they made since getting Shanahan and Lynch into the building? They got a haul for Trubisky last year. They have tons of cap space. Now they have a quarterback. I'll give you one. They should have picked Deshaun Watson. Well, there you go. There's one. There's one. There's two. Okay, Michael, thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching the Ringer Trade Deadline Live Special.